All right, good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett, staff and guests. The lobby is open and recording has begun today.
Thank you, Dustin. Good morning, everybody. We will convene the Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. Our first item today is an executive session for litigation review. The board will go into executive session to discuss legal matters relating to litigation or potential litigation to which the agency is or likely to become a party. I expect the executive session will conclude at 10:30. As always, if we need more time than that, Dustin and I will come back and let you know for a time certain. If we finish before 10:30, we will stand at ease until 10:30. So thanks for your patience. And with that, we will pause for a second and convene an executive session.
Hello, attendees, and good morning. This is Dustin Dixon, Executive Assistant to the Board, speaking on behalf of Chair Postman and Member Garrett. The executive session this morning is anticipated to extend another 5 minutes. We should be reconvening again around 10:35. Thank you.
And we are done with our executive session on discussion of pending and potential litigation with legal counsel. We'll move on to the second item in our agenda, which is approval of the minutes from our February 1st meeting. A motion to approve?
I move approval of the February 1st Board Caucus meeting.
Great, and I will second, and that is approved. We will move to a legislative update. It looks like we do have the legislative director, Chris Thompson, on, who's been super busy, and Rick Garza too. So, gentlemen, I'm not sure who wants to start, but if you can just give us an update of where things stand with, what do we got, about 5 or 6 hours till House of Origin cutoff?
Almost down to 6 hours. Yeah. 5
How are we
o'clock.
looking?
So on our lab bill joint request with Department of Ag, that's passed the House and it's already scheduled for exec in Senate committee on Thursday. So they're skipping the public hearing and just going straight to bringing it up for passage. So that's good. A couple of bills we've been following pretty closely. The social equity legislation appears to be dead. There doesn't sound like there's any viable path to resurrecting the bill. It's still in rules, and it looks like that's dead. It looks like the Cannabis Commission bill is dead. It looks like the craft cannabis endorsement bill, which would have allowed a lot of producers to retail on location, that's dead. There are several bills moving. I'll tick down a half a dozen of those. The governor's community reinvestment legislation has passed the House. This has been a really interesting bill in terms of the votes. It was a very bipartisan vote in the Appropriations Committee. It was a straight party line vote on the floor of the House. So anyway, that bill has now gone over to the Senate. The bill providing for restructuring of cannabis revenues has also passed the Senate. That was not a governor request. Senator Saldana has that bill. That passed pretty easily, 41-7. And it does provide both some just clarity restructuring as well as some substantive moving around a little bit of the money. At least it doesn't actually do it because the budget is what determines spending authority, but the statutory the statute that addresses this question is essentially a declaration of legislative intent ongoing. So I would just, sorry, I should have mentioned that the social equity efforts, the current grant program and the roster of mentors, they would get funding. With the demise of the social equity bill, there's a little bit of a question mark there as to how many funds are available and for what. If there isn't a loan program, for instance, that's a bit of a complication. But not to get too much in the weeds, I'll move on to a couple of other bills that are moving. The cannabis retail store security measure has passed the Senate and is scheduled for a hearing over in the House on Friday.
What's that bill do in brief, Chris?
It creates a potential for sentencing enhancement for robbery if it's done in concert with another person. So if there's, if it's in conjunction with another person, I don't know if that's legally something like a conspiracy or something like that. But
That's what I was-
it's a sentencing enhancement that would put robbing a cannabis store on par with robbing a pharmacy. It would also direct that reports be given to LCB by the retail stores when they are subject to a robbery. And then, has our enforcement division leadership sitting down regularly with the state patrol to see, here's what the information we have, what do we make of it, do we see patterns, that kind of thing. So that sort of dialogue between LCB and WSP is the other part of the bill. A couple of liquor bills have passed. One reduces the liquor license fee by half for a period of time for selected liquor licensees. And I won't go through the list, but it's spirits, beer, and wine, restaurants, nightclubs, caterers, a few other categories. It's far from comprehensive, but it would reduce the fee by half from May this year through next year, December. There's also a liquor bill, 5940, that has passed the Senate and would enable industry members to contract for bottling and packaging services, for instance. If they're a liquor licensee now, they can't do that under current law. Only non-liquor licensed businesses can do this as a service contracted from a distiller, a brewer, etc. And this would open that up a little bit to allow, for instance, distillers with machinery and capacity to do packaging and bottling to hire out that service to other industry members. We've been following really closely another Senate bill, 5951, that deals with hemp and was billed as a consumer protection truth and labeling measure. That was amended significantly at our request. It still is sitting in rules, and I would doubt that there's any plan for moving that bill forward. And then our big request bill is saving the best for last.
Yeah, I was wondering. I thought
Is
maybe I had missed it.
yeah, I just wanted to anyway. It's sitting on the House floor. It's been sitting on the floor calendar. It's number 42 on the list. It has 15 amendments on it. It looks like there's 30, but there are two versions. There's a first and a second substitute version. So each of the amendments are drawn to both versions of the bill. So there's actually 15 amendments, a couple of them potentially friendly amendments that we've said we could agree to. Most of them not. Most of them are hostile amendments that present any number of problems. I won't go through them. If there are questions, of course, I'll see what I can do to answer them. But we're in the process now of trying to determine, is there a will? Essentially, that's what it comes down to for House leadership to move a substantive bill in the face of these amendments and try and get it out of the House by 5 o'clock today. Or they've got a rule where whatever the last bill is, they take up one last bill at just before 5, and they can finish however long it takes. So they've got one they can devote to sort of extending the timeline. But apart from that, I think my sense is there's some pretty hard feelings in the House about what the minority did to stall and filibuster legislation last night. I gave up at 3 a.m., but they were still on the floor, still working through. Actually, not even that many amendments, a dozen or maybe 15 amendments on that bill, but they were talked to death, and so. I stopped counting after about 6-7 hours of floor time on that bill. So that's going to, color how they think of any bill that might burn a lot of floor time today as to whether or not to take it up.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for all the time you've been putting in on this, Chris. It really is a minute by minute thing as things change, and we're in as good a shape as we are in large part because you've stayed on it. I think we have the absolute right sponsor of that bill and Representative Kloba, who is a real champion for the public health and public safety aspects of this. That's the one thing, and I know that the sort of floor schedule impacts a lot of things, and that's why you don't want your stuff to wait to the last day. And when it loads up with these amendments, which don't come from people trying to perfect the bill, but they oppose the bill, it's problematic. And so I know that's hard. But even setting aside kind of the LCB dispute part of this, law enforcement supports this bill, public health supports this bill, huge chunks of the industry that we regulate support this bill. Is that not going to help get this over the hump? I mean, can they set aside the smaller fight that's off to the side? Because what's at stake, and you and I are talking about this, but what's at stake really is our ability to stop that infiltration of these derivatives outside of the regulated 502 market. This is something that we've heard from every corner of the industry that needs to be stopped. We need this bill to do that. We've been talking about this really since the day I got here in March of last year. We started talking about Delta 8. We heard from local governments, we heard from public health people, and we heard from licensed cannabis operators that this was really going to hurt the market. This is the bill we need to regulate that. I try to separate myself from this and the emotion, obviously, that I have about it and my support for this industry. How can that die?
And is there anything we can do right now?
Well, that's the big question, Board Member Garrett. We're looking into whether there is an affirmative answer to that question, whether we can do anything. I mean, what we can do, if anything, is quite limited. And I will come back to what I said before about a question of will. This bill could be passed if House leadership wanted to make sure that it passed. Now that would of course mean other bills die.
That's right. And we don't want to have to pick those, right? Somebody else is just as anxious as we are at this point.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other people sitting on the floor calendar, biting their nails right alongside of us.
But what do we do about, there's just been a relentless misinformation campaign that's been going on. And I know just yesterday, legislators were getting emails from certain parts of the industry talking about a drop in cannabis revenues in Washington state and how that proves that essentially our market is broken and that the regulators aren't doing their job and all these things. Those numbers just are not right. I mean, they take a small snapshot. In some cases, it's just wrong. Some cases, it's exaggerated. And just to be clear, and you should know this in case you get asked these questions, but the small dip in revenues that we're seeing are only compared to last year, which, as you know, was an extraordinary spike brought on by both the pandemic, people, being at home, people having extra spending money that they used at cannabis, an incredible spike. So it is down from that incredible spike. It's not down from what the pattern has been throughout the maturation of this market. We're 25% above where we were 2 years ago. If there was no pandemic, we would be ahead today of where we were forecast. Yes. Member
So
Garrett.
David, have we responded to that email
We
with
have.
that information to the same people?
We have in some, Chris was able to forward on some information to the chair, and hope that that's shared. I've just been digging into it more this morning. I was just talking to our CFO before this, and if you look at the numbers, what they're told is just not true. Both the numbers don't show what's really happening, and then the underlying analysis of that somehow that shows a broken system is false. And what we're seeing is an economic trend outside of what this body, the LCB, does. The State Forecast Council predicted a dip in revenues after last year. They understood what was happening, and you know what? We're ahead of that forecast. So a dip was forecast. We're doing better in revenue, and this is based on actual tax collections that our CFO tracks very carefully. That's the best indicator of what these sales are. In January, sales were 1.4% less than they were last year. But last year they were up 20% over the year before. So we're doing, the trend is what you would expect in a maturing market. They use California as an example. California has a brand new market. Our first year, we were up 100, whatever, you go from nothing to huge, and that's what we're seeing in California. So there's we're in a good place. The market is being managed as voters directed in Initiative 502, and that the legislature confirmed in their enacting legislation, in which we've been regulating all along. The market is good, and one of the things that some in the industry complain about is that statistics show that we have a more diverse set of products available to consumers in Washington State than in some of these other states. They talk about brand concentration. And so they see that as a bad thing, that we have these many choices, because for the bigger businesses, you want to dominate. And if you're looking ahead to what is a national competitive marketplace, like, better to have just a couple of huge, Coca-Cola type products. But that's not where we are today. And again, the voters set this system up. The legislature implemented it. The governor signed the bill. The LCB's in implementing it all along and managing it. I don't think I'm not embarrassed that we have a diverse set of products in our stores. That's how we support a variety of businesses, from small tier 1 growers to the large tier 3, or those that have multiple licenses and do processing and producing. Our system is allowing for all of that. And to use that as a sign that we need to stop this regulatory move is obviously bothering me. I just think I really,
Yeah.
in times of recession, alcohol sales go up. We don't have enough of that to see what happens with cannabis, but nobody should be shocked that these types of products have some rise and fall. But our fall is from an aberration that we saw last year. It's not a fall from a natural growth. If you looked at a curve, it would still be like this, with just this little tiny.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
the
Dave,
chair is correct.
it
There's a lot of
sounds like
misinformation out there.
they need to hear everything that you're saying right now. And how can that message get back to the top of the thinking process to wherever this bill is sitting?
Well, there's there's a lot of misinformation that we're up against. And, one example is what David was just referring to, is the claim that sales are down 8%. That's just flat false. There's a claim that it takes us 18 months to do any rules. That's flat false. And those pieces of misinformation are being twisted further to spin this narrative. To your question, Board Member Garrett, the avenues open to us at this point in the process are extremely limited. Members are in caucus, or they're on the floor basically all day. So we don't have access to anyone that won't respond to texts or emails. And there's unlikely to be a lot of response there in this home stretch as we've got here today. So we can work with, as the chair aptly described the prime sponsor as a champion. She's a champion on this. And we can work with her. She's very responsive to us. Getting to leadership is much more difficult for any of us. We can try, and then we wait. We've already alerted a lot of the stakeholders who support this legislation, and they are sending messages to key members, especially leadership. I've heard from the patient community. I've heard from public health. I've heard from law enforcement. I've heard from industry that supports us. And they're all making those efforts. And nobody knows whether any of it is going to make any difference in the end.
And I get, like I said, I get that. I know the pressures that leadership is under to try to get things done. Everybody's got things they need to do. I just felt like we were really close. There was growing support for this bill as it was moving along, the committee votes and everything else, but we're just fighting this. And the other piece of it is, legislators are being told what's happening in other states. And, we checked with the national experts, and that's not true. I mean,
Right.
they use Nevada as an example. It's just not true. And, but, I know there's no one today who's going to have the time to look into what, 6 other states have done or not done. But yeah, so Chris, I guess we're here. If there's anything either one of us can do to help, anybody that we need to call. I think it's important to make sure members know that what they're being told, though, is demonstrably false. And you did that with the email from that quoted Jim Morgan. I think his tracking of this is so much better than something coming from lobbyists trying to stop this bill.
Yeah.
And the thing that we all need to understand, and I hope they do, is if this bill doesn't pass, what we lose is the ability to stop the public health crisis growing with these unregulated products. And we're told all the time, everybody agrees with us about that. And the thought that they would kill this bill over what essentially is an internecine battle in the industry over hemp-derived THC and let these stores keep selling this phony stuff is really outrageous. And I'm going to hold out hope for the next 5-6 hours here that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to draw up a short list of, since we're staring in the abyss, right? The bill lives or dies today. A message to share with all the legislators in the House, not just the sponsor, to say, if this bill dies, here's what we're looking at, A, B, C, D. If this bill, as we've requested it, passes and then goes on to be signed into law, here's what we can see as the consequence of that. And make it as clear as we can to all the members in the House.
And you're saying exactly where I keep trying to say, because we're saying this to each other. We need to do exactly what you're saying, is get that message out there, because sometimes the last thing a person hears is what sticks the most. And we're talking about what they are just recently heard and all the negative. Where is our message coming now to the forefront to everyone?
And we've been doing it, Chris and Rick in particular have just been on this and communicating with legislators, but you're right, we need to keep doing it. I think, Chris, that's a good idea. Yeah. I do have some notes from looking at the numbers that I can share with you as soon as we're done here. I think people need to know what's at stake. I'm glad that the stakeholders are engaged. I think public health and safety and law enforcement I thought they had really changed the tenor of this debate by getting into it. So people understand what's really at stake, but let's do it. And also, even though not everybody in the industry gives us that courtesy, let's include the cannabis trade associations that we know of, and make sure they see our message today too when it goes out.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're not saying anything secret.
exactly.
Okay. Well, we'll draft something up. We'll circulate it internally. We'll check in with you before we hit send. But that's, I think, for the moment, that's the thing we can do that would be the most useful or helpful at this point. Since at the moment we've answered the questions about what do you think this would do, or, we've provided them our take on all 15 of those amendments.
That's right.
And I just can only hope that at some level the policy still matters, and it isn't just optics and how this feels and which lobbyist is for it or against it. The policy is a really good one, and the misinformation and the self-interest underlying that misinformation is really hard to combat. The old truth about, a falsehood is halfway around the world before the truth has got boots on to get out of bed. So that is a very real thing that we're looking at right here. So we can't keep up with all the misinformation, and we can't ensure that decisions will be made on the merits or what's actually true. But we can do what we can do, and that's it.
Let's leave it all in the field. Let's see what we can do. We know that some of these amendments that, are designed to drag this down, that, cannabis lobbyists are involved in those discussions. And like I said, we will operate in the public realm as we do, and we'll share what we say, but we know what we're up against. So I think Rick would like to join us here. Chris, I know you've got a million things to do, so if you need to bounce, I understand, but thanks for all you're doing, and we'll send you some notes here soon. Rick, you want to join?
Well, I just want to very briefly, Chris, thanks for all your work. Not only on the bill we've been talking about, but the lab bill got out and is moving. And so thanks for all your work. It's disappointing. We just spent time talking about our sales being up or down. What in the world that has to do with a bill that's about public health and safety and consumer protection? That's how this disinformation is being used, anything possible to try to work against the bill. I want to thank David for being engaged with our THC cannabinoid bill and working with staff directly. Ollie, it's disappointing, but as our representative on the Social Equity Task Force, you did everything to support 2022, the social equity bill. You did everything you could, and we did, to try to move that bill out of appropriate. So I just want to recognize the work of our board members directly on these bills that are important to us. And then staff, Kathy, Justin, Becky, Jim, Brian, everybody, always there through the weekends, through the nights, to help us figure out how to respond to what's going on. But a great effort, Chris, by you and the staff and our board members to try to get this to move along. And we'll see where we end up. It'd be a travesty if we're not able to deal with these impairing cannabinoids that are even outside of our marketplace. Right. So that's why I think it's so important what you said, Chris. 3 or 4 points about what we lose without our bill, the state, our legislature, and then, what's gained, and it's in the bill. So
That's right.
Whatever effort you can make quickly to do that, Chris, thanks for all your efforts, and thanks for the board and staff. That's all I have, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah.
And I was going to say, even Rick, back to the 2022 and Chris, to even have our staff that you had on the phone on a Saturday morning, still trying to see what we could do on this 2022 to get it moved, and to all of the staff that came together Saturday morning to say, what can we do, only to hear that it's too late. Yeah. Or that decisions have been made. But we had, what, 5 staff members together Saturday morning, still trying to fix this bill to get it through. So thank you, Chris, for bringing us together, even though it was a Saturday morning.
Yes, and it was the, it was, the LCB was really open-minded about that bill, Ollie, and I
Right.
think that was, your approach to this was, we didn't expect this bill. We have our own rulemaking going on, but what do we do? How do we go? And I feel good about that part of it, and I think there'll be a bill. And the last thing I'm saying, Rick, I'm glad you raised that about, what do the sales figures have to do? Because it's a little weird to be defending how much cannabis we're selling. And I hope this isn't controversial, but I will say, I don't see my job as trying to get as many people in Washington State to ingest cannabis as often as possible and as much as possible, and to buy the most expensive stuff in the store every time. I don't think that's a regulator's role. We're regulating a diverse market, both in business size and product availability. And I hope that we're not going to be measured, or negatively, that 1.7% drop in sales from this January from last January. It's just not the way it should be. But we should be operating on facts, and that's what it's about. And the facts are on our side. So, okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Rick, was there anything else you wanted to add for general agency updates today?
No, thank you,
Okay.
Chair Postman.
Okay, thank you. Member Garrett, anything more in a board member report?
No.
Not for me either. Dustin, anything we've forgotten or anything to add?
Nothing additional, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody, for being patient with us today while we did executive session. We ran a little bit over our normal time, but I appreciated the report from our legislative director. So with that, we will adjourn the board caucus meeting for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. Oh, by the way, we do not have a board meeting tomorrow. We did not have items on an agenda that needed to be acted on. So as we do from time to time, we have canceled tomorrow's, but we will have it in 2 weeks, of course. So we will see you then, if not before. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.